Welcome to the Executive Hustle podcast, where I am your host, Kirsten, speaker, author, retired CEO, mother of four, and recovering workaholic. Explore with Central Pennsylvania local executives what it takes to lead well, live well, and learn well. Understanding that leaders cannot survive, let alone thrive, without a spirit of curiosity, a discipline of accountability, and a disposition for vulnerability. Let's dive in. Welcome to the Executive Hustle podcast. Today, Mary Quinn is my guest. I'm so excited to have you, Mary. She is president and CEO of the YWCA of Greater Harrisburg. Welcome, Mary.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
So excited to have you. Looking forward to diving into lots of very interesting topics. But first, one of my real opening questions is, Mary, at 7, 8, 9 years old, is this what you thought you'd be doing?
No, absolutely not. I can't say I remember exactly, but I didn't grow up in a house with very educated parents. And so, I think even from that, they already had limitations
Hmm.
on their children, thinking, well, it's just, I don't know what else is out there because I've never been exposed to it. So I don't know how to expose my children to it.
Oh.
And I remember my mom I was always a tall, I've been fairly tall from a young age. And, she always thought well, like any mother who just thinks that their child's probably the most beautiful is, well, you're tall. Maybe you could do something in modeling.
Oh.
I know it was very sweet, but
And
um,
was that ever a thought for you, or you just sort of said,
yeah,
okay?
not really. I mean, she had me in dance lessons, but I was also kind of introverted and shy, and
Mm-hmm.
so that really wasn't the direction I thought would be great. But I mean, there was a time when I did, um, you know, uh, revere the Rockettes.
Oh. Who doesn't? I
I
mean,
know. She's
to
like,
kick
"Hi,
that
you
high,
could be like you're taking dance lessons. You can be a Rockette."
you live in New York. I mean, to kick that high, come on. What's not to love about that?
Yeah, yeah. I don't think she was so fond of the living in New York thing, but
Mhm. Yeah, 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 yeah. Well,
definitely the can.
not many people know that. So how did you get here? You've been at the Y over a decade, and what drew you to that mission? And short version, what's the story that got you there?
Yeah. So before I was here at the YWCA, and just maybe even just for a little background, because I feel like the YW often gets overshadowed by the YM.
Mm-hmm.
And, YMs and YWs were started in London, England in around 1855.
Okay.
And they shared, YMs still have the same logo, that triangle. And it was about mind, body, and spirit. And the YM over time gravitated towards the body. And that's why we see a lot of YMs are very much health and fitness. They
Yeah,
have
that's
that, you do live strong. And that's kind of the direction they headed. At the time, YWs, which were the women's kind of arm of this civic group, didn't have the same rights as men in the world, in this country or in England.
mm-hmm.
And they really felt that they wanted to educate each other on decisions that were being made about women without women. So they really gravitated towards that mind aspect of that triangle and that advocacy.
Hmm.
So there really is a very, while we do direct service, we're mostly known for, here in Harrisburg, we have a residential facility
Mm-hmm.
with over 100 women and children living here full time. Um, and then we do all these other community programs. So we're doing direct service with about 10,000 individuals each year, from a variety of things, from preschool to providing, we have attorneys on staff who provide civil legal representation. So we're doing a lot of very diverse, but also holistic things for people. And it's very different than a YM.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I just wanted to put that out there about
fascinating.
how I came here, because that is kind of relevant to my decision to be a part of the YW. Before I was here, I was did government relations with the County Commissioners Association of Pennsylvania, and so they're a membership organization that represents all 67 counties. They do, they have a whole government relations arm of things, and that's what I was a part of, in addition to some of the other insurance things that they do. And I was there for about 13 years, and it was a great organization. I enjoyed my time there, but it started to get pretty old and boring. And there really was no kind of mobility for me there.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I didn't hate it. So I didn't want to leave for something I would like less. I really wanted to make sure that the move that I made was something that was meaningful and purposeful to me. And there just so happened to be, as I was looking around and kind of job shopping, which took me years, by the way. I mean, I really probably started looking in like 2008 and didn't actually come to the YW until 2013.
Okay.
I had graduated with my master's degree in 2008. And I thought, okay, well, now that I'm not so busy, like, because I work full time and went to school at night, maybe I can start thinking about a career change. And, but I wanted it to be the right fit.
Yeah.
And so I found the YW, and what really attracted me, because it was actually a lateral pay move. Like, I was not making more money coming here. But what really attracted me, and I felt like, well, this will be a great next stepping stone, is it was giving me more supervisory, more like kind of interaction with the community in which I lived.
Yeah.
Working for the Commissioners Association, you work for all 67 counties, and I felt like there were, I knew more things about Greene County than Dauphin County. And here I lived here and didn't feel like I was kind of creating a sense of community for myself.
Yeah.
And the Y had this amazing mission. They were doing all these programs and services, and they needed basically like a chief operating officer. So they needed somebody to do all the internal workings, strategic planning, and programming of the organization. And it sounded great. And I will say today it is great. But once I got into it, it wasn't so great. It's really messy here. The work, when you are working with individuals and their emotions, and the type of work we do, it can, it just can get really messy, and people can get lost in their own grief and emotions, both, the client and the staff. So I was really in over my head initially. And because we do so many things, we're about $8 million in operations, and we have about 7 different departments of services that we run. So, and it runs 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. Yeah. So there's now, when I work for the Commissioners Association, my day ended at 4.
Yeah, there's no off season.
No, you don't really get that. So really, I think it was this wanting to develop myself professionally, seeing an opportunity with some of the things I would be responsible for, and wanting to just try something different and be more connected in the community.
Well, it must be fulfilling that for you. You've been there now quite some time. You've risen from chief operating officer to CEO now. And so it's keeping you there, even though it's messy.
Yeah.
Talk to me about how, so, I spent a couple decades in nonprofit. I get how you can get so connected to the people that you serve, how you can get intertwined, how you can lose yourself. I think those were your words. What have you learned about that aspect of it? because you've lasted quite some time, and that's really hard. And so not everybody can do that, and not everybody can do that while maintaining their own mental health.
Now, I think one of the things that I feel really fortunate about, and whoever comes after me, um, even for our board to consider like succession planning, that onboarding process, because we do so many things. I kept thinking when I came into the role almost 2 years after I was hired as chief operating officer, my predecessor announced she was leaving, and I applied for the position. And they did a full national search. Mm-hmm. So I think I probably had about like 6 interviews in total. And I do feel like I had the advantage because I knew how everything worked and what it was. Sure. So I was felt really fortunate that I had an opportunity to observe my predecessor and kind of watch maybe things that I would do differently. Mm-hmm. And I am still good friends with my predecessor to this day. And she had a really great heart and believed in the mission. But one of the things I would see her do that I will not is she would get involved with the clients. Mm-hmm. And I am very much removed from that process. Mm-hmm. Mine is that visionary, that strategic, making sure we have the funds that we need, engaging the community, doing events like this podcast where I can share about the work that we do, but also have a really deep and meaningful understanding of it because I worked in it for 2 years prior to taking over the CEO role. But, it's really what I'm doing is, obviously marketing, communications, and finance. And we have an 80,000 square foot facility, and making sure that our buildings and grounds are well maintained, and that health and safety, all of our insurance, payroll, liability, all of that, the functionality, and making sure that, I see my role is really taking care of the staff as much as possible so they can take care of the clients themselves. The other thing, I'm not qualified to be a social worker. That's not my qualification. that is not where my skill set is. Although I will say, one of the things I think is really important for leaders is, you want to model the behavior you want your employees to see. And there has never been anything here that I haven't been willing to do. Yeah. I have rocked babies in our daycare. I've attended court to help with proceedings. I drove our after school bus to pick up kids from Harrisburg School District. I've been out into Lebanon County where our main Veteran Affairs office is. I made sure that I was able to understand what the employees themselves were what their responsibilities were and who they were interacting with and how that kind of all worked to be able to have that big picture. So for me, it's, I do think in some ways I can be once removed from a lot of the drama that we see here. And I don't, my former assistant worked in what's called the Children's Resource Center. And this is, I'm sure you're familiar with it from the work that you did, but for anyone who doesn't know, when a child is sexually assaulted, they're brought to a hospital setting for forensic exam, and there's a whole team, and there's, the law enforcement's there. And so we're a part of that team. And I had an employee who was a great employee, and she turned in her resignation and she said, I just can't do this anymore. Like, I just can't witness what I see every day in terms of the cases and these poor children that are, helpless and they're being victimized. And it just so happened I had an opening for an assistant, and I asked her, would she would you like to stay with the organization if she did something different? And she was like, yes, absolutely. So I know how hard it can be
Yeah.
to have that vicarious trauma that a lot of our staff get from the work that we do here. Um, and, I do feel fortunate that I get to be once removed from that. Every once in a while, though, someone will still get me. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not completely immune from interactions just by virtue of being here every day.
Right.
So that's really hard, but I am a little fortunate with
Mhm.
kind of the position in which I hold.
Resiliency must be a pretty strong narrative inside the YWCA.
Yeah, I mean, you hear a lot about resiliency and grit,
Hmm.
and just kind of what we don't want to see is apathy.
Yeah.
You know, like it's one thing to get so kind of sucked in. We don't want people to get so sucked in that they're burning themselves out. At the same time, we don't want people not to have empathy and just be apathetic
Right.
towards the client and towards the work that they do.
Yeah. My understanding of the research is that, the individuals who have to face these, really horrible situations and continue to go back, like that woman, continue to go back to the hospital and see these things. It's not that they need to separate from those experiences, but that they need a place every once in a while to process those experiences and have a release and have a healing opportunity. Is that something that is available, or those organic opportunities inside of different programs? How does that show up for people?
Yeah, I mean, for definitely for our staff, there are those opportunities for self-care. Becomes really hard is the nature of the work that we do, like 24 hours.
Yeah.
So if you're here, um, maybe what happens is, we have one staff who needs to answer the hotline, one staff that's been called away to go to the hospital call,
Mhm.
another staff that has to now go to court, and another staff that's in the shelter working with a client. You know what I mean? It's like,
Right.
so if somebody gets overwhelmed, it's not like they can just like be like, oh, I'm going to walk away and
Hmm.
take a 15-minute break, because sometimes it's just not even possible.
Hmm.
And in those scenarios, we try to do the best we can in those scenarios, um, with letting staff know that, they can reach out to, um, definitely a supervisor, to kind of step in those situations. But we do other things. I mean, we do a lot of events for our employees to network together, whether it is, we had a taco truck, an ice cream truck over the summer. We do a staff retreat at Hershey Park. So we do some of those kind of events where we make sure our employees know that they're valued and it's an opportunity just to step away.
Hmm. Yeah, and build relationships between them,
Yeah.
others, so that in those moments they know they have partners, people they can rely on. It sounds like that's really prioritized, and that's super important. Do you have, you've mentioned so many good practices in terms of how you're running the organization and approaching the people that you lead. Do you have an overriding leadership philosophy that you have come to believe in, or guides you on a daily basis?
I don't know, if it's just like one thing, because I think it's like a mix of a lot of things. But I really do believe, again, that we model the behaviors we want to see.
Mm, yeah.
There's nothing I would ask my staff to do that I wouldn't be willing to do myself.
Yeah.
Um, Trust building, you have to be willing to listen more than you talk.
Mm,
Um, Manage your own ego. I don't need, when we have new staff, I mean, we have 80 staff and we have 3 different shifts here. And sometimes I don't always get to connect with everybody.
yeah.
But if I see a new face, I will introduce myself, and I don't introduce myself as I'm the CEO, right?
Yeah.
They'll figure that out in time. Because, I think humility matters.
Yeah.
I think connecting with people and listening to them, making sure that that they're a human being and they have lives outside of work and things that they care about, and just even taking note of those little things. Um, I think that really builds trust and rapport with people, and having that kind of steady consistency.
Yeah.
The other thing is, I think it's great for leaders to seek feedback and ask questions, especially of their other leadership teams, like, well, how should we handle this situation? Um, but I think you have to be very clear up front that when you're looking for feedback, you are not looking for consensus. This
Ah,
is not, you know, you're
interesting.
still the, I'm, while I want to absolutely practice humility, I
Mm-hmm.
also want to be clear that it is my accountability for every single client and employee here.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a full picture from every source. Like I have every piece of the pie where everybody else has their piece. And I have to be able to take all of that and put it together and be confident in the decision I make. So I think sometimes people can get caught up on wanting to please everybody and not wanting to have conflict within their team. And I think when you can be very upfront about that, that you're not looking for consensus. This is not a democracy. This is me trying
Not
to
really many of those left,
make
but
a good, yeah, a good decision based on your feedback. And maybe I might find that,
uh,
not all of your feedback, it's gonna like mesh with everything and the decision that needs to be made.
I really resonate with what you're saying. I was literally coaching a leader. It had to have been 3, 4 weeks ago, and I challenged her on a thought she was having, and I said, "Why are you having that thought? What is behind that?" And she said, "Oh, I just want to make everybody happy." And I was like, full stop. Wait a minute. And that reminds me of this consensus concept that you're bringing up. Is there a lesson or a story or a moment? Like, how did you come to this? Because you're very resolute when you talk about this, and it's not something that people walk out of the door having as a leadership skill. Like consensus, wanting people to agree with you. People fight against that for a long, long time as leaders. How did you come to this as such a confidence piece of you?
Um, I think it's definitely come over time, over a decade. I've been fortunate. The reason we know each other is through Vistage.
Yes, yes.
So, I do feel really great, that I had the opportunity to learn from other leaders who had been in their roles longer than I had. Um, Early on in when I first became CEO was back in 2015, and I had never had this type of elevated leadership role before, and the responsibilities that came with it. And I took it very seriously, and I wanted to do a good job. But I think, like any new leader, you do get that imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
And a couple of things that were happening in my life at that time. So, not long after I became CEO, my husband got very sick and ill and passed away of cancer. And during the time that he was sick, and in those 2 years between becoming CEO and his passing, I didn't want anyone to know
Mm.
how sick he was and how bad things were, because I didn't want anyone, my board in particular. They knew my husband was sick. They knew things maybe weren't going well. I did not share that this was a palliative care situation. And I worried so much that they would think that I couldn't do my job, and they would want to somehow maybe take responsibility back from me.
Mhm.
The other thing that was um, kind of apparent to me at the time is that my board kind of, I think, good and bad, I appreciate their confidence in me, because they knew that I had been here a few years, and they're like, "Oh, she's got this. We're not worried about her." So in a way, they were a bit disengaged,
Mm.
and I was okay with that because I felt if I challenged them about being more engaged, then they have every right to challenge me to do more, and I don't have any more to give right now. I got, just too much going on in my personal life. So we're just going to status quo here for a bit. Um, and by the time my husband Lenny passed, I was so worn out that, I had to think, like, is this really what I want? Do I really want to continue with, the YW? Because it is an exhausting role and I am exhausted and I don't feel like I have a ton of support from my board right now. So what do I do? Do I confront this? Um, do I be very vulnerable and say, I can't do it like this anymore? I know that I've made this very easy for you as board members, but I need you to step up because it's crushing me. And that would be a very kind of vulnerable position for me to put myself in because they could say, well, no,
Then you're not the CEO we
if you
want.
can't do it all, then you're not the right
Yeah.
person for us.
Yeah.
So I did that. I did have a moment where I said to them, this is what's going on. This is how I feel. And to their credit, they were great. And we did a mentor. So the board president and I did a mentoring program together.
Mm-hmm.
So she and I would get together with a local coach. I don't know if you know Jewel Cooper at all. Um, she's she was a board member many years ago and a great community support person and been in banking and does a lot of leadership development stuff. And so my board president and I would meet with her, I think on a monthly, I mean, this is a while, this is like 8 years ago now, on a monthly basis. We had an agenda, we had action items, and we would both come to the table with the things that, we wanted to talk about or wanted to accomplish.
Yeah.
And it really kind of um, set the standard that we really follow today. And I had to find the, I don't know, sounds kind of cheesy, but like strength to say, hey, if this isn't where I'm supposed to be because they say no, we
Yeah.
we need you to be different than you are, then then I have to accept that and say, then there's something else better waiting for me.
Right.
Um, and once I kind of gave in
Mm.
to that and said, this is when they don't want me, they will tell me. And until then, I'm in charge.
Yeah.
This is me. I, have the, authority to be in this role and to make these decisions. And I think that helped with that idea of not looking for consensus, just,
Right.
seeking opinions because I want to be well informed. And I certainly,
Absolutely.
don't know everything. I know what I don't know. Um, but also it really established confidence in my role and being able to have that that ability to make that kind of stand.
Mm. It's almost like you were making the decision for them until you decided otherwise.
Yeah, I
Like,
think so.
yeah, like I think that they don't think I'm the right one, and so I'm almost staying small because I think they think that, but there's no evidence of that at this time. And until you sort of got out of that mindset, then you really showed up and you started to act in your full self.
Yeah, yeah, and I didn't want to disappoint anyone, and I really felt like they gave me an opportunity and I needed to level up, whatever that looked like, even though it was um, costing me in other ways.
Yeah, as you reflect back on the time with your husband, and the way you did handle it, you obviously can't change anything, but knowing what you know now, would you do anything differently in terms of how you involved them, who you told, the time that you spent in different places?
I don't, because, I think it was such a great lesson.
Yeah.
Um, going through that situation. And it was a learning opportunity for me. So yeah, it was hard. Um, but it had a great outcome. And I think that that's really, when you act with integrity and you want to do the right thing, and the world is very gray.
Yes.
I mean, our best efforts, um, the right thing is taking all the pieces of information and acting in the best capacity in which you can. Um, I think good things can really happen from that as long as you're acting with a good sense of ethics and integrity.
Hmm. How much does that type of thinking show up for you and for your staff on a daily basis in terms of how you're running the programs? I mean, you serve such a variety of individuals with such diverse needs, and how do you bring together the staff to create an identity around what you're doing? This is us, those kind of brand promises that are out in the for-profit world. But you know, how do you stay true to your mission in terms of who and what you want to serve, but yet the needs are just so great? How do you balance all of those demands?
Yeah, I mean, I think right before the pandemic, we did a lot of culture work with our staff and talking. Our mission is eliminating racism and empowering women. And people are like, what does that mean? Like, what is that? What is that? Um, and I have to say, even for me, I was like, I don't know, like, what does that mean? And a YWCA, is very different. Well, there's about 200 YWCAs across the country, and we all share the same mission. We all look very differently.
I was gonna
We
say
all
your
do
cow.
different programs.
Your cow is all different.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, we're all doing, some different things based on how we evolved. We're all our own 501(c)(3s. And so there's really not a lot of consistency of, well, how do you basically effectuate that mission?
Yeah.
And because I would get this question, I mean, I would get it from, community people and like news interviews. And I just felt like this is like unacceptable, that I don't know how to answer this. And I would even get it from staff.
Yeah.
And, in those first years that I was the CEO and not really having that confidence, I would also get people in the community who would try to tell me what it meant
Oh yeah.
and think that the YW should be doing this or spending money here because
Yep.
that's your mission. So I needed to be able to say, no, we can't be all things to all people.
Nope.
And that's not what our mission's about. I mean, I think I got a request once for the Y to give money towards a monument, a statue that's commemorating, African American history. And while I think it's great,
Mhm.
um, that's not our mission. Like
Yeah.
that's not
Yep.
where we're going to spend our resources.
Yeah.
And I just remember this person arguing with me saying, well, that's your mission. It's like, it's not really. So we did work with a group to kind of put more context around what that meant, and getting beyond mission into what is our true north?
Hmm.
What is our vision? What is our purpose? And what are our core values?
Yeah.
And so we talk more about those, like beyond the mission of, our purpose is really to transform lives.
Okay.
And we're not looking for that band-aid. When we have somebody who's homeless, a woman or child, a woman and her child that are homeless, we're not looking just to bring them into shelter and then leave when their time is up. right? So we're going to bring them in, we're going to assess them, we're going to find the root cause of their homelessness. And maybe we find the root cause of homelessness is domestic violence.
Mm-hmm.
So then we're going to get them, some counseling services. Are you, maybe they're not divorced, maybe they fled a situation. Like, we can help with that divorce and custody. We have employment programs, so we can help people get back into the workforce. We're very much a goal setting program. So what does that transformation look like? And we definitely know it's different for every person. And so, the other thing that we stress a lot with staff is, um, we're not here to fix anyone.
Mm-hmm.
Even when we talk about transforming lives, we're here to give them the resources to fix themselves, because only you know what you need,
Yeah.
truly, and what you're going to be able to accomplish. And we can encourage you and motivate you and things like that. We're not here to fix people,
Yeah.
and or judge people for that matter. And the way that we model behavior with each other, through our core values of being accountable, always doing, following through with the things that we say we're going to do, showing respect, and being inclusive. So, those are the core values and that we operate under, and we talk a lot about with our staff, um, and want them to model with the clients because that's how we treat each other.
Right.
So, in that way, that's how we're kind of creating that culture and helping staff connect to the mission. Our mission, um, the direct services that we provide have evolved over the years because of issues, that women have faced that
Mm-hmm.
revolve around domestic violence. More women are victims of domestic violence, than men. That's just the reality.
Yeah.
More women are sexually assaulted than men.
Mm-hmm.
More women are victims of trafficking than men. And so all of those programs have evolved over time because of our mission. And so, we are an advocacy organization, but we're also providing that direct service based on, um, the mission.
Right. Right. I love how you go. I wrote down the words "go beyond mission" and the transform lives. It sounds like that's like this overlay that everyone can use, regardless of what program they're in. Today, this is the person in front of me. This is the program we're in. How are we transforming their life? And tagline, it's giving them the resources to do it. I'm not doing it for you because if I do it for you, that's not sustainable, right? I'm not going to be leaving here with you. And so there's an empowerment piece to that. Yeah. Wow. So encouraging, both in terms of you clearly treat the staff in that way and then you treat the clients in that way. And it's like a probably a very self-perpetuating cycle. That's awesome. So as you look forward in the next couple years, what kind of trends are you seeing both in terms of your services and the people coming to you to work for you? So a lot of questions I get with leaders are around the workforce. So I'm curious if you're seeing any trends both in your workforce as well as are you making any changes in the types of services that you're delivering with changes in our communities and the needs?
Yeah, well, the types of services we're delivering has changed. In particular, to human trafficking.
Mm-hmm.
We do a lot more trafficking work than, we did,
Mm-hmm.
um, even 5, 10 years ago. It was, um, something we were aware of, but we didn't have we didn't have a strategy around it, and now we do.
Yeah.
Um, we are the only ones in the state of Pennsylvania who are federally funded for the trafficking work we do. It's very popular. I know there's a lot of, um, other organizations who want to do this work.
Mm-hmm.
I don't always know that they know what they're getting themselves into, because these are our most difficult clients. They've had the most trauma experiences, and they're really quite hard to work with. And we have a different standard of outcomes for them than we would, when we work with a domestic violence person. We're getting them out. A successful outcome from a domestic violence person is we're getting them out of their abuser.
Right, relocated.
Trafficking victim, especially when it comes to sex trafficking, because we do labor trafficking as well, but in sex trafficking, one of our outcomes is just having a touch point with them, because so often that trauma bonding that they have with their trafficker uh, and their drug addiction, most times, 9 times out of 10, most of our trafficking victims have um, a lot of addiction, and that, unfortunately calls them back into trafficking.
Right.
They will come in maybe for a couple days and then walk right back out the door. So that can be really hard for staff, and but it's a completely different outcome, expectation, knowing what they've experienced. So we definitely try to keep um, our thumb on the pulse of what do we see in communities? Where can we um, meet individuals where they are in terms of their needs, while also not having like a mission creep, right? So
Yeah,
if we knew people didn't have, you know, reliable transportation, like that's not like we're not gonna, that might not be our mission, right? That's a mission for maybe capital area transit or
right. Partner with them to do something.
yeah, like, maybe that's not, we're not gonna create a whole transportation program or something like that. Um, so it's, really around housing and homelessness, and victim services, and education for children, that sort of thing. So we're pretty mindful of what the trends say. We did do. There was a time when we have some programs in Perry County, and there weren't as many programs out there for rural individuals, because where we're located here at our main campus is very urban. Um, so we have developed some programs to do more of our services in Perry County, where it's much more rural. So we do try to stay on top of those type of trends, and be responsive to the community in that way.
Wonderful. So you're looking more at geographic expansion within the confines of the services you've provided versus scope creep, mission creep outside of
Right.
services. That makes a lot of sense. But with your
Yeah.
ear to the ground, you have a sense of what those other needs are, and you can pull in other community partners to help solve those needs. Yeah.
Yeah.
That sounds like a good strategy. If folks want to get involved in terms of supporting you or these partnerships, things like that, how would they reach out to you for that?
So, I mean, you can reach out through our website, which is YWCAHBG.org. You can contact me directly. We do have some social media pages through Instagram and Facebook. Um, but yeah, any of those ways you can reach out. Our website also has, links for all of our events and any giving opportunities that we have. We do an event around the holidays to help connect people with a need and a wish. And a lot of people love doing that, and having actually something tangible to give. We need volunteers that help wrap presents. So all of that is listed on our website.
That's wonderful. Awesome. Wonderful ways to give. And I've seen you speak on these particular topics, like making some of these real serious issues more salient for our community businesses and things like that. Is that something that you do if people would want to bring you into their company to learn more about?
Yeah, absolutely. I speak to a lot of groups about kind of what's going on in the community. I mean, the other reason I think YW's kind of fall in the shadow of a YM is the nature of the work that we do. not only how we evolved, but they're not great. It's not pleasant to talk about
They're kind of
domestic
bummers.
violence or human trafficking or
Yeah.
homelessness. These are,
Yeah.
this is the kind of the underbelly of society that we're working in.
Right.
Um, and we have a lot of really great outcomes. I think that based on the number of people we serve, um, they're like this. If this community didn't have us as an organization,
Mm-hmm.
I think it would cause some real pain points. But yeah, so I speak to a lot of groups. I get invited to a lot of civic groups,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of women's groups to really kind of talk about what we see. Um, and just to kind of make people think. I mean, we talk about in October coming up is um, Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and there's a global movement called the Week Without Violence that YWCAs worldwide participate in. And one of it is about like gender-based violence, and we talk about how women um, are more likely to experience violence in their life than men.
Yeah.
What we don't talk about is the other side of the coin.
Yeah.
Why are women experiencing that? Who is perpetrating that violence?
Mm-hmm.
And that's a really hard thing. There's a lot of, we need more men to engage in these conversations, but we also don't want to offend anyone either. I mean, we have some really great supporters. When I was in Vistage, I was one of only two women in my group, and every single man in that group was enthralled with what we did. They wanted to know more. They would call me personally and say, "Hey, I have a concern. I have a concern about one of my staff. I think they might be a victim. What can we do?" So
Yeah.
there are far more supportive men out there. And how do I bridge that gap? How do I reach them? How do we engage them in that conversation? And I don't know what it is, because sometimes I feel like I end up preaching to the choir
Mm-hmm.
a lot
Yeah.
to women who already know everything that
Right.
I'm telling you
Right.
because they've experienced for themselves.
Well, and that's why I asked the question, because I think this maybe is a good platform just to get that message out and say, like, look, your businesses, if the stats are true, then your businesses are experiencing this, at every level. There are men and women in your businesses, families, and this is happening in your businesses if you have more than one person in your business, right? And you have professional development, education days. There are ways to bring this narrative above the conscious level or the unconscious level for people and make it more of a comfortable conversation. Give resources to leaders of what to do instead of waiting for that emergency. And as a parent of three daughters, this human trafficking thing, it's too prevalent in this area not to be taking notice and to be thinking about what are the proactive strategies, what are the cautions, what are the warning signs. This is It's something that's not just happening somewhere else.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, I really appreciate the conversation, the opportunity to put all of these things out into the open, broaden the narrative, bring more people into the conversation. Besides all of the content related to actually what you do on a daily basis, the 3 leadership lessons that I'm going to walk away with today that hopefully leaders will. Also, work can be messy. No matter what you're doing, work can be messy. And to not get lost in that, find a way around clarifying what your role is, and so that you can take care of the staff, and the staff will take care of the clients. I've heard that multiple times, both today and with other leaders, and that helps get you out of those messy environments where you could get too connected. The second was model the behavior that you want to see. I love that you also focused on trust in that concept there. The leaders have to be that first and last spokesperson for the values and the mission. And so I just love that. And that came out clear in our conversation. And then the other one that I just love so much was the feedback is not consensus, and humility is not consensus. Such powerful takeaways for today. Mary, I'm so excited to have this conversation. Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, been a pleasure. All right. Until next time. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you for joining me today for another great hustle conversation with a Central PA executive. You can find out more about my guest in the show notes. And if you liked the episode or have something to add to our conversation, please find me on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen. Subscribe, rate, and review. Remember, leadership is best practiced in community. You know a leader who needs to hear something from this episode, so pay it forward and send it to them today. Don't wait. Until next time, the best leaders not only lead well, they live well and learn well. Bye now.